City Life Church presents a life resource designed to fulfill Christ's commission by reaching people, raising leaders, and releasing ministry. We invite you now to join us for this session presented at the 2010 Church Leadership Conference held in Johannesburg, South Africa.
No, he made the comment that he was hoping he'd have a conversation with me. We've been having lots of conversations yet. I'm not sure who's been doing most of the talking, but we've been talking for a lot of years, and it's been really good. I'm glad to be doing what I'm doing with my husband. He's an awesome leader, and I'm really proud to be his wife. Well, the Lord's been doing some miracles, I think, already among us. I don't know about you, but I just feel in my own spirit, personally, some personal miracles in my own heart taking place. And sometimes we can look to, mega healings and outward things and think, wow, what an amazing miracle. And of course, those always are. But I think sometimes we can underestimate the small miracles that have huge, huge impact that the Lord does in our own spirit, changing certain mindsets, breaking things off. And I don't know about you, but I think the Lord is great, and He's already doing miracles among us. I so appreciated what was said last night by Pastor Dave. He made this statement about the ministry and feeling inadequate and so many other things. And he made this statement that the Lord spoke to him. It was never about you. I don't know about you, but that just struck a chord with me. It was never about me. And I tell you what, I just had someone recently make this statement to me. If we could just get over ourselves, think of what we could do in God. And that's a very freeing statement. The Lord has called you. He's anointed you just as you are. Yeah, we all got to change. We got some edges that need to be refined and rubbed off. But God is so committed to doing that because it's never all about us. It's about what He can do in us and through us. Before I get into the word this morning, I wanted to tell you a little story about a man and a woman who had been married for a very long time. They had been married for 60 years, and I think there's a miracle right there. In this day and age, we come across a lot of broken marriages, and I know that the Lord has called you to have a strong marriage. The Lord has called you to be one of those examples and heroes in the faith who makes it just like this couple. How many in this room are married? Okay, so I'm talking to the right people. Okay. Well, this particular couple, they'd been married more than 60 years. They shared everything. They had a loving relationship, lots of conversations. They didn't keep any secrets from each other, except this lady had one secret, and they both understood it. She had a shoebox that was up high in her closet, in her cupboard, and that was off limits to her husband. Her husband didn't know what was in that shoebox. He was told early on in the marriage, don't ask and don't look. Don't ask and don't look. And he kept that rule. That was the only rule, so he could function pretty well within that. Well, all of these years, the man had never really thought about the box too much, but 60 years in now on this marriage, this little old woman, his wife, gets sick. And the doctor confirmed she doesn't have very long to live. Well, we're all going to get to that point at some time when we pass from this life to the next, but this man was so grieved and so sad. Of course, it's his partner of 60 years, and they began to just put their affairs in order and just finalize certain things because they knew there was only a few days to go. Well, one particular day, the lady was laying in bed, and the man had been sorting through some stuff, and he came across this box up in the cupboard, and he pulled it out. He went down to her bedside and said, "Can we deal with this now? Can we open up this box?" And she said, "Yeah, it's a good time. Go ahead and open it." So the man opened the box. He found 2 dolls, like crocheted dolls. I don't know how many of you crochet. I think it's a dying art. I don't have the patience for crocheting. But I have an image of what that looks like. A little crocheted doll there, and $250,000. So he's like, okay, what's this? So he asked his wife, what is up with the dolls? And she says to him, well, before we got married, my grandmother said to me, whenever I get angry with you, or we quarrel, or we have an argument, instead of sinning with my tongue and saying things I'm going to regret, I should just keep quiet and crochet a doll. She says, so that's what I've done all these years. Well, the man was so moved because he's looking in this box and there's only 2 precious dolls. He's like, wow, what a woman. I mean, in 2 years, only 2 dolls in 60 years. Wow, what a testimony of our marriage. So, kind of teary-eyed because it was a special moment. He said, okay, well, that explains the dolls. Now, what about the $250,000? She says, well, that was the money I got from all the dolls I sold. If I can just say to you, we're talking about building the team that builds strong churches, and I actually thought this morning I should have probably talked about the marriage team. I'm going to talk about something else, but if your marriage team isn't strong, you're not going to be able to build a strong church. And your ministry will only ever be as strong as your marriage component. You're going to quarrel. You might have $250,000 to show for all the quarrels that you had, but always come back together like this couple did and have that testimony after 60 years. You know what? You're my priority, and I don't want to do this without you. And I just wanted to say that this morning to all the married couples out there. Even if your partner, your spouse, isn't maybe your ministry partner, they're definitely your partner for life. And ministry will come and go, but at the end of your life, you want to have that marriage strong and intact and in place. And I really thank the Lord that James and I have a really strong marriage. And I know that if things in ministry change, that's okay. We're still together. This is not all about what we do. It's about choosing to do life together and doing it well. So I want to pray before we go to the Word this morning. Father, we thank you for the privilege of handling the Word of truth, Lord, the Word that brings life, the Word that has the power to change our thinking and to change our mindset and to align us just a little bit more with you and with your goodness and with your greatness and with the bigness of who you are and what you want to do in and through our lives. Lord, we know that even though it's not all about us, Lord, you've chosen to use us. And Lord, what you look for is that willing heart, and I thank you that that's so present here today. Lord, we open our spirits to you and say, put in what you want to put in. Take out what you need to take out. We're available, we're moldable, we're on the potter's wheel today. We thank you for it now. In Jesus' name. Amen. Well, the title that I want to give you, and I'm going to actually be doing a part 1 and a part 2 tomorrow morning, is this: a pearl of great price. Now, we've all heard that term in the Bible. I'm not talking about salvation here, like the parable indicates, but a pearl of great price, because there are pearls of wisdom. There are some things that really begin to shape and mold and bring fruitfulness in realms of your life. And if we can identify what they are, we can go after those things intentionally and with great perspective and structure and being strategic and so forth. But as we do that, maybe we won't see it immediately, but over some time we can look back and say, wow, what a great thing the Lord did. And I just wanted to briefly give you a little bit of background. I myself don't have a strong educational background. It was never really my strong suit. I did finish high school. You'll all be happy to know I did matric, as you say. But I went to 1 year of Bible college and really felt like I had accomplished everything I needed to in that 1 year because I found a husband. Everything the Lord wanted to do ministerially, was sealed in that moment. Yeah, so I wasn't really in Bible college for the curriculum. I was in Bible college because I had a heart for the Lord, wanted to serve God, didn't really know what to do, and did need a godly husband, which the Lord did bring me. So I just had that 1 year of that. James and I married. We were in the States married for 6 years before we moved here in 2000. That was 10 and a half years ago. We've had all 4 of our children here. And really, this ministry, this church that was started, you have a word from the Lord. You say, great, yes and amen to that. You have no clue what that's going to look like, but you sure do have an idea what you want that to look like. And the Lord began to take us on a journey, on a road of really letting that word unfold, and it's still unfolding today. But I'll tell you what, there are so many surprises along the way. I don't think when we get that call, we have any concept what is in store for us. And it's just kind of like marriage. You don't really know what it's going to be like. It's really good, but there's some things you just kind of got to work through. And so definitely our journey has been a lot of that. The Lord has taught us a lot of things. You know, we've learned some lessons, some the hard way, some through learning from other people. And so really as I share today, it's really from a premise of one who's walked a road for 10 years of having to see some things come about. You know, I think of starting a church, I think of ministry. You know, you don't have a church if you don't have people. You know, I know that might be a revelation this morning. My father just got it. You know, I can't believe I could tell him something. But you don't have a church without people. And if you aren't great at gathering people or building the lives of people, you're not going to move from a level that you're at to the level that the Lord wants you to be at. Isn't that true? And sometimes, you know, I know every church has a rotating door. We all lose people, we gain people, and it forever goes like that. But if we're always losing people and we're never gaining more and building in and having some longevity with people, we're going to be really discouraged for a really long time. And those are the kind of things that make you want to quit. They make you want to stop. Well, this whole idea of a pearl of great price is about how to cultivate and bring out the best in people. Because if we as leaders can do that, boy, the sky's the limit. The sky's the limit. You know, people in your church are your very greatest resource. It's not your building. I've seen guys who have inherited churches. The building was awesome and it was paid for. And there's 15 people left in the church. That's great. We aren't going to have a financial pressure, but we know there's a job to do, and it's called building the people of God. You know, there's churches that meet in open air. It's not required on a building. Yeah, buildings are miracles, but people are bigger miracles. And so I want to give us some keys, hopefully today and tomorrow, that are going to help you build the lives of the people that God's called you to. I began to do some research and some study, and I came across this concept of pearls. And I was so intrigued by it, I want to share it with you. I myself love jewelry. I've worn my pearls specifically today with you in mind, so you have a constant visual before you of what I'm talking about. But I came across this idea of pearls, and I don't know how much you know about pearls. I didn't know very much, except I like to wear them. And you know, when I found out about pearls, I found that there were two kinds of pearls. There's a natural pearl, and there's what are called cultured pearls. And then there's another category we won't talk about. Those are beads. We're not going to talk about beads. We're going for the real thing today. Natural pearls and cultured pearls. Now, the interesting thing about natural pearls is those are pearls that are formed exclusively by nature. Those are an oyster that a fisherman opens up and boom, there's a pearl in there. Wow, nobody did anything to get that pearl, just there it is. Now, natural pearls are very, very rare. They're hard to come by and they're extremely expensive for that reason. But then there's another kind of pearl called cultured pearls. And cultured pearls are pearls that are created by a pearl farmer under controlled conditions. It's a pearl that's created by somebody under controlled conditions. Now, as I go through some of these interesting things about pearls, I want you as leaders just to begin to relate this to the people in your church. Think of this through these eyes as I begin to point out some of the interesting things about pearls. I think so often in ministry, we wait to get lucky and find a natural pearl. We wait until a natural pearl, a seasoned ministry, someone who's just got the goods, lands in our church, and wow, now that ministry can advance. Now look what we can do. We got that person. But you see, those kind of people are miracles when they come along. They're blessings, and we've had a few of those, thank God. Every ministry needs them. But if that's all you ever rely on, you're never going to get to a point of strength where your leadership base and the resources and the pearls and the things that are in your people actually are cultivated and emerge. Do you know that everything rises and falls on leadership? We've heard it said. Well, if that's true, the success of any department, any ministry within your church needs leaders to make it strong. It needs leaders to advance it to the next level. If you've got to do everything by yourself all the time, your ministry will be capped. Your ministry will be limited. So we just hope and wait and wish for natural pearls. But it was discovered that there's another way to get pearls. Pearls are valuable, they're beautiful, they're precious, everybody wants them. There's another way to get them. You don't have to hold out for a natural pearl to come along. You can actually create pearls. Wow, there's a thought. There's some interesting things to note about the process of growing cultured pearls. The potential for cultured pearls has always been there. Do you know the potential for cultured pearls from the beginning of time has always been there? But it took somebody who had vision to begin to cultivate pearls. And not just vision, but know-how. To begin to maximize the potential of pearls and ultimately revolutionize the entire industry of pearls. Cultured pearls are formed by intention, not by chance. Cultured pearls don't just happen on their own. Cultured pearls are intentionally designed. Interesting in light of people. Pearls are developed from an ordinary oyster. Can you bring up that picture of an oyster, if you've got it? Pearls are developed from an ordinary oyster. Now there's well, that one looks really good. The one I had seen looked really horrible. But that one's all cleaned out. That's the shell now. That's got some pearls in it. But if you've ever seen an oyster, how many's ever eaten an oyster? It's just one of those food groups I kind of avoid. But it's kind of a gray, rough shell on the outside. And when you open it up, it's kind of gooey. And there's all this membrane and this stuff. And I don't know why people eat it. They have to add sauce. But there's this thing. It's ugly. It doesn't look good. It's like that. A pearl can be formed in that. A pearl can be formed in that. See, the oysters will be a host or a carrier for the pearl. You know, people that come to you might be just like that. You might look at them and say, boy, they're a little rough around the edges. They got this hard shell. Boy, look what's on the inside. That's gross. They don't really have anything that I think we can use around here in this church. We'll just let them serve in children's ministries. We'll just do this. And we marginalize the people God sends us. Because all we see is that they're an ordinary oyster. But see, every single oyster, just like every single person, has the potential of producing pearls, given the right pearl farmer who will cultivate the right thing in that oyster. You see, that oyster is selected by somebody. When they go to cultivate pearls, they have to decide which oysters are we going to use. Let's gather them together and let's begin to be intentional with that oyster. Someone selects that oyster. Not every oyster in the ocean is going to be a pearl cultivating host or carrier. Someone has to select it. And that someone begins to implant, transplant, graft in tissue that will one day become a pearl of very great value. Think about that for a minute. Someone has to find that oyster, select it, put something in that isn't there. Transplant, it's like a part of yourself that goes into that thing that begins to start the process where something special starts to be formed. There are some things that can be done that can ensure near perfect pearls every single time. We might be thinking right now of some people, one or two, maybe three, that, oh yeah, you know, they were oysters, they are now pearls, it's great. But you see, there's some things that can be done that ensure not just perfection every time, but a massive, massive crop of these things. Cultured pearls have dominated the pearl industry in many, many ways once they were started. And the thing we need to know about that is they can be designed from start to finish to be exactly what will be the most valuable and desirable in that market. They can be intentionally designed to be exactly what is needed. Let's think about that in light of people in your church. When you're the pearl farmer, you take that person, that oyster, and you begin to transplant and infuse and put in certain things, you can know, hey, this is what it is, this is what it's going to be. And you can be intentional and begin to customize and design that pearl in that person to exactly fit what needs to be there to be a great asset to the kingdom of God. We don't have to leave this up to chance. Another interesting thing about getting the perfect, most valuable kind of oysters is that those kind of cultured pearls that are found in these oysters are monitored for up to 2 years. But you see, we as leaders, we so often, we identify something in a person, and then we just turn that realm over to them. Hey, that's off my back. Now I can go. And then we don't understand when we got this problem, when we got to keep going back, and we got to keep going back. But you see, a pearl farmer knows. It takes constant monitoring, constant cultivating to ensure the health of that oyster crop. Because the oyster could die, the pearl crop could be cut short and destroyed and never come to fruition. There's people like that. Maybe a leader just left them to themselves instead of cultivated them. You see, monitoring ensures the survival of not just the oyster, but also of the pearl. It ensures the better health. I see you've got the things there, so I won't worry about sticking to that. Well, there are some reasons why pearls exist all over the world. You know, more than 100 years ago, pearls were a very rare thing. If you had pearls, wow, that was amazing, because they weren't very common. But today, pearls exist all over the world. They're readily available, and there's some certain things that begin to happen that allowed that transition, that growth, that volume of pearls to infiltrate the market so that now they're readily available to us. Here's some of those things. These pearls exist because somebody had the vision for them to exist. Think of it like this. There was a time no cultured pearls were around. But someone had vision for them to be around. You might look at people in your church right now and think, well, I have a leader deficit. I have, a volunteer deficit. I can't seem to get enough people to do anything, and the kind of people I get, I can't do anything with. We've all been there. I think every leader in a ministry, in a department, in a church faces that at some time or another. And the question becomes, what are you going to do about that? You can always live there, and there's a lot of ministries that do live there. And you know what? They don't move from that place. But you don't have to live there. You could have vision to have some pearls that you don't have right now, but if you're willing to invest, you're willing to adopt the right techniques, you're willing to make some changes, you could be sitting in a year or 2 or 3 or 4 or 10 or 20 or 60 and look around and say, man, I am surrounded by pearls. Look at how rich I am. These pearls exist because someone not only had vision, but they also gave a helping hand to make their existence a reality. There's a lot of people with vision. I have a lot of vision for our children's ministries, for certain departments in our church, for our ministry as a whole. My husband has a lot of vision. We are not short on vision. But there has to come a point where that vision translates into some kind of implementation, or all you have at the end of your life was the potential for great things because you just still got your vision. Vision isn't enough. Vision isn't enough. Every 18-year-old out there has vision. Not every 40-year-old has done anything with it. It's always sad when you go to Bible college with certain people and, excuse me, and you see, wow, look at this gifting, look at this gift of God in them, look at all these things. And yet you go back years later and nothing's really changed. It's still, well, yeah, you still got all that, but you haven't actually done anything with that. Do you know anybody like that? They haven't done anything with it. It's always ideas up here. Well, there comes a point we got to actually put a hand to that vision. We've actually got to do something to make these people and these leaders and these pearls a reality. These pearls exist because somebody wanted them. These valuable, precious, beautiful, costly, expensive pearls. Somebody wanted them. Are you a leader right now that can say, you know what? I want that. I want that. Because there's a way to get it. There's a way to get it in high volume. There's a way to transform an ordinary oyster into this amazing carrier of pearl after pearl. An amazing thing when I saw this picture of this massive pearl that just opened up. And inside all this stuff, there were just pearls everywhere. Do you know that oysters don't just carry one pearl? They can carry lots of pearls, lots of different things that, wow, look at that. Look at that in them. Look at that gift. Look at that potential. Do you want that? Do you want that in the people of your church? I think it's easy for us as leaders to say, well, you know, if I just had that kind of a person, look what I could do. If I just had that money, or if I was in that city, or if I had that building, I know I could accomplish great things. But remember, our premise here today is your church isn't about all those things. It's about the people in your church. And you might be saying, well, you haven't seen the people in my church. I mean, it's great for you to get up here and talk about these pearls, but I don't got one pearl around. I'm surrounded by hard shell oysters. Well, this is what I'm saying to you. We never get the people we think we need. We never get the people that we just really wish we want. And it's always easy to envy another ministry. Well, look at that. Well, look at that. Somebody transplanted, they identified, they transplanted, they nurtured, they cultivated, they put something in at some point that created a pearl. Are you going to be a pearl farmer? This was something that James and I were challenged with early on. Because, you know, when we first started City Life Church, we had 2 other families, and that was great. You know, at least there was somebody. That's always better, somebody versus nobody. That feels a lot better. But there we were. Every Sunday, we were doing everything, you know, well, everything. Setting out the teacups, setting up the chairs. We had transparencies in those days with overheads and getting the music and the music stand. My husband led the worship, got up and preached. We did, you know, you all know what I'm talking about. You do everything. But we started to realize that as God was beginning to bring people, you know, it's funny, nobody was saying, oh, can I just begin to do that and do what you do? I don't know about you, but I didn't really get any people like that just said, here, I'm available. Use me. What can I do to lift burden? In the beginning, we didn't have people like that. We have, in the years, got some people like that, which is wonderful, and they're a blessing from the Lord. But we started to realize that this church will only grow as big as we create leaders and systems and structures that can actually handle the growth. Otherwise, us doing everything all the time will become the cap and the limitation on this church. And you know, it doesn't take very long to get there. I think by about 35, then 55, then 65 people, okay, still at 100, we can add a push, do it. Some of you are struggling to break beyond the level that you're at in your ministry. It's not because you're not working hard. Sometimes, you know, it's not a lack of hard work that hinders our success. Sometimes it's just that we need to make some adjustments to what we're doing to how we're doing it, to how we're utilizing people and beginning to build that tier that can bear load and carry weight along with us. And when we do those things, boom, our hard work suddenly yields some fruitfulness. So it's not that you're not working hard. It's not that we weren't working hard. It's that if we wanted pearls, we had to create them. We had to create them. You see, the development of cultured pearls took much of the chance, the risk, and the guesswork out of the pearl industry. Do you know, even if you get a natural pearl land on your doorstep, and I'm talking about a person, they're gifted, they have ministry experience, they have leadership, they just have some skills that can really help you. We're often so eager just for the help because we're burned out that we just put them in. And then we have problems. Because a natural pearl doesn't have your DNA. No matter how great they are in the context they were in, they are not a fit yet to what you've got going. But yet we just hope for these natural pearls and we just put them in everywhere thinking, great, now we can do the work of the ministry. And then we get burned. And then there's a church split. And then this one lets you down. And then there's an immorality problem and they were on the platform and you didn't know. Well, you took a big risk, a big chance when you got that natural pearl. And you were desperate because you hadn't cultivated enough pearls around you to tell the difference. So you put them in. Well, see, when you cultivate pearls, you get a cultured pearl. It's something that from the very beginning you've been intentional with the design. You've been infusing DNA. You've been infusing judgment calls. You've been infusing a like-mindedness. So you're taking so much of the chance and the risk out of this industry. Well, as a result of cultured pearls hitting the market, the industry became really stable. It became predictable, and it had absolute rapid growth over the last 100 years. And this is interesting. Today, more than 99% of all pearls sold worldwide are cultured pearls. I think there's some lessons to be learned here. There's some lessons to be learned here about cultured pearls. You know, most of the people that come to us as church leaders, they come as ordinary oysters. And it would be pretty easy to have the mindset of, well, what good are they going to be to me? You know, as much as leaders, we should believe in people and want the best for people and want them to be fulfilled, there's a really strong component when you're in ministry that you're looking for how they can serve the vision God's called you to. There's a really strong component that's there that what can they do? How can they fit in here to help make what I'm doing successful? And there's a balance to this thought. And we're going to get more into that later. But so we wonder, boy, this is all I've got. This is all I've got to work with. But what we have to understand is that people don't have to stay just an oyster. They don't have to stay like that. But if they're going to become a pearl, they got to have a pearl producer. They got to have somebody that has vision for their life. They got to have somebody that will, first of all, find them, identify them. They got to have somebody that will believe in them. This is the oyster, you're the one. You can do this. Somebody that can spot the potential in that ordinary oyster. They got to have somebody that will cultivate the pearls in them that they are capable of producing. You know, as leaders, we have to be on the lookout. We have to be on the lookout. And if we could just see the people God's brought us and start looking at them with a little bit different eyes and say, you know what? Every single person in your church, in your ministry, in your department has pearl potential. Every single person. There is not one that could be disqualified. Not one. You know, I remember in the very early days when James and I were just tapping into some of this and realizing we can't do everything by ourselves and we want to grow. We want more than just a guitar on a Sunday. We'd really love to have some drums and really love to have a keyboard, really love to have some side micers up there. You know, you can look at this and say, wow, they sound great. Yeah, it wasn't like that 10 years ago. It was really, really rough. And, you know, I remember one night in particular, we were so desperate. We were like, Lord, okay, you haven't brought us any musicians, none. And what are we going to do about that? I mean, Lord, it takes music to have church. You know what we need. And the Lord really challenged us, well, use who you have. We're like, Lord, have you seen who we have? I mean, they're great, but musically, I don't know. So we just got creative. We just called this, we invited the whole church. If you have any desire, all we asked for was desire, no skill. If you have any desire to be involved in worshiping God on an instrument with a microphone, you just come. We thought, let's see what we've got to work with. Oh, it was bad. Oh, it was bad. I sat there, you know, I was helping the vocalist, which that tells you a whole nother thing. I mean, that's where we were. You know, and I'm listening to the vocalist going, turn the microphones down. No. We're going to throw everybody off. That one's putting that one off. That one's not keeping rhythm. It was a mess, an absolute mess. But out of that mess, Pastor James said, okay, there's one guy, Clopas. He's a maybe. He's a maybe. He's an oyster, but maybe he could be a pearl on the drums. So he began to have Clopas come in. Clopas didn't smell very nice. We always had to require he take a shower before he came in, and that didn't really seem to help either. We thought, boy, the drums might help build the service, but this smell is not going to do anything for the congregation. We might be counterproductive here, but he just kept working with him. And Clopas was our first drummer in there, drumming away. And James says, well, we need a keyboard player. I said, yep, I didn't see any of those show up, you know, at the let's try out night. Nope. He says, well, I'm buying a keyboard anyway. We're buying a keyboard, we're buying a bass guitar, we're going to believe the Lord to fill these instruments. And he said to me, Gini, why don't you try to learn that keyboard? Now, I had piano lessons from grade 2 to grade 4, you know, like do, re, mi, fa, so. That was it. That was the extent of my thing on piano. I could play chopsticks a little bit, maybe with 2 fingers. I said, me? No, I'm the pastor's wife. You know, the pastor's wife of a few people. I don't know when you get to call yourself a pastor's wife, but it shouldn't have been back then. So he says, yeah, you. So here he's a pearl producer. He's a pearl farmer. He says to his own wife, you're an oyster right now in the keyboard, but I could see a pearl there. Come on. And he bought this, he brought it home. He got me this chord book. He said, come on, honey, you get on that thing, you just play. And every time I played when it sounded bad, he said, oh, that sounds so good. And he said, I am not even kidding you. 8 days after buying that thing, he said, Gini, I think you should play on Sunday. I said, what? I mean, I'm thinking like in a year, maybe 2, I'll have something worth, no. Sunday you should play. And here I'm, really? Am I that good? I could play on Sunday. Oh, Sunday, great. What happened? 10 days ago, I hadn't touched a keyboard in 20 some years. But there was a pearl farmer who said, I see you. I've identified this. There's some potential here. I'm going to facilitate that. I'm going to fuel this thing. You can do it. And when that leader starts cultivating that, what happens to the follower? Yeah, I can do it. I'm there. So I'm there slugging it out. And for a few years, I played keyboard in this church until the Lord answered the prayer of my heart and said, Antoinette, you know, I was pregnant time and time again up there on keyboards, you know, playing. And I think I was like a week off from delivering our third. And I go into the doctor, I said, it has to be now. It has to be today. I think it was Thursday. He says, why? I said, because I cannot get up there 9 months pregnant one more time and play that keyboard. It has to be Friday before Sunday. And the Lord said, Antoinette, and I've been released ever since. But a pearl farmer is someone who has vision for what does not exist to pull it out. You know, I think of Antoinette in children's ministries, and some of you are going to glean from her this week. She's awesome in children's ministries. But there was a day where she was hired at the church to do some phone calling. Phone calling. And as she was faithful, and as I began to see, hey, there might be more here. Why don't you try this? Why don't you try that? She worked herself into running the children's department of this church, which is hundreds of children, no experience in it, no education in it, but a pearl cultivator who could say, hey, I know there's not something now, but there might be able to be. You don't know who's sitting in your church. You don't know. You think you know, but you don't know what God sees them. You know, it's like so many other things. We think of an old, dirty, dusty mine. You know, in South Africa, we have lots of gold mines. But think of a dilapidated, used up old mine. People just drive by it. They just, that old thing. What if someone found gold in an old mine again? I tell you what, there'd be a serious stampede to get to that place and extract that gold. Everything changes because of what we believe is inside of it. Think of a village that's got a dried up old well. It's not even good for anything. Let's just store our crops in that thing. It doesn't seem good for anything, but if we knew there was water in that well, it would change everything. Now the village gets built around that thing. It's a life source. It's something that can produce. It's something that can feed others. It's a perspective change. You see, people don't come in the packages we expect them to come in. And so we just overlook them because we're waiting for a natural pearl to land on our doorstep. They don't look like what we thought. They don't seem like there's anything that's usable there. Certainly not for our vision and what we're trying to accomplish. But you know, God's plan is not just for your vision and your ministry. There's things in people that He's counting on you to pull out for them. And for the people they're going to reach. And the people that gift and that pearl is going to touch. That was way beyond your context. And God's looking for a leader who will say, I see that. I see you. Come on. Let me put some stuff in. Let me monitor you. Let me cultivate this thing in you. There's a guy who really revolutionized the pearl industry, and his name was Mikimoto. Interesting guy, because he was born in Japan in 1858. He was born to a very poor family. They were vegetable farmers. And at the age of 13, he had to stop going to school to go help his family farm these veggies. And, you know, in his free time, he lived near a coastline. He'd zip on down to the beach and down to the shore and just watch the fishermen bring in their catches. And this was a particular shore where pearl divers would pull in their catches. And Mikimoto became absolutely fascinated with these guys pulling this horrible stuff out of the sea and opening them and finding pearls. He thought, wow. He began to develop a passion for pearls. Well, he didn't have a great education. He was just an ordinary guy. There wasn't anything special about him. But he made a decision, I want to be a pearl farmer. I want to figure out how to cultivate pearls. If pearls can be created, I'm going to find out how to create them. So he bought a farm. He borrowed money. When he was 30 years old, he invested everything he had into this farm and began to work it. 5 years in, near bankruptcy many, many times, just slugging away, trying to figuring out how to make these pearls. After 5 years, he found that he could create a hemispherical pearl. But hemispherical pearls couldn't pay the bills. So he kept working, he kept creating, he kept tweaking what he was doing and adjusting his methods and his systems and his environments to begin to find a better way to create pearls. Well, it took him another 12 years to come up with a completely spherical pearl. but it was not a commercially viable process. It wouldn't pay yet. So he had to try something different. He came across in his research, now he's been doing pearls for a lot of years already, 5 plus 12, a lot of years, not making any money, working really, really hard. He's working really hard. Some of us are working really hard, but we don't have anything that's viable or yielding the kind of fruit we're looking for yet. He heard about these two guys, Misei and Nishikawa. He learned that they had discovered a technique for creating completely round cultured pearls every single time. Well, he starts to search out these guys. He wants to know, how are you doing this? I've been working, 17 years at this. How are you doing it? Well, he began to talk with them, and what he did is he actually adopted their methods and their techniques of what they did. When he did that, it revolutionized his pearl farm. Revolutionized his pearl farm. He was working really hard. He had a lot of the right components, but he didn't have the exact right recipe that would yield the production of pearls at the rate he needed to do that. Well, once he adopted this method, pearls could be produced by the tens of thousands now. And as a result of this, pearls became accessible to a large number of people around the world. Mikimoto is a leader in the cultured pearl industry. He adopted these techniques and his business began to rapidly expand. Listen to this, by 1945, now Mikimoto's been at this a while, he had shops in Tokyo, London, Paris, New York, Chicago, Boston, LA, San Francisco, Shanghai, and Bombay, and was thus one of the first Japanese brands to attain international presence and recognition. Wow. He went from obscurity to being able to produce something that could yield amazing, amazing fruit. Some things to note about him is that he wasn't particularly special. He was ordinary, uneducated, but he had a desire to cultivate pearls. He had tried lots of methods before that were unsuccessful. He was willing to make changes in order to accomplish his objective. He had to swallow his pride in order to take on board someone else's method that would help him to succeed. When we can get that thing in our spirit, it was never about me, then we can take on board where someone else has had a measure of success and say, hey, I can let that go. I can take that. If we can keep our eye on the objective and saying, yeah, I want to produce more pearls. When we can be open, anything can happen. Well, Mikimoto today is a known and trusted name in the pearl industry. What happens is we get so attached to our own methods. We get attached to our own programs. We get so attached to the way we do it. I'm guilty of this. We struggle to change. And when we hear that someone else in ministry has been successful, our defenses go up. And we think of a reason why that works for them and could never work for us. And we start weighing up, but I'm better than them at that. But I'm producing that. And so often it's this own mindset that we have as leaders where we feel threatened, we feel defensive, we feel like we gotta be the whole package, and that we are the whole package to get our church where it needs to be. But nobody's that smart by themselves. God's placed members in the body of Christ because there are people we can glean from, there are people we can learn from, there are techniques we can adopt and make our own that will launch us from hard work into fruitfulness. But we close ourselves off. We find our identity so in what we do and how we do it that if a change needed to be made, now it's personal. Now it's personal. I know what this feels like because for the first about 7 years of the church, all of the administrative systems and structures were things that I created. My husband's an amazing visionary, and I'm an implementer. He has this great vision, and he paints the picture up here, and I say, okay, this is how we're going to have to get there. And so all the systems, the structures, even the admin and HR and departments of serving, they all originated from my heart and mind, or what had come to me. And you get your identity wrapped up in that, where you start feeling like when you receive criticism, now it's personal. Well, I put that system. Well, what do you mean? What do you mean it's not good enough? Well, and we get defensive and we feel threatened, and our identity starts to get attacked in these things. But the Lord walked me through a process of prying my fingers off of all these things, and that's another sermon, to say, it's not your church, it's my church. You don't have the whole package of what you need to get it where I want it to go, so get over yourself. So find what you need to find, learn what you need to learn, glean what you need to glean, and change what you need to change. Mikimoto was a guy who could do this. And as a result, he just cultivated pearls. He just kept doing it. He just made money and money and money because he had pearls and pearls and pearls. And what I want to say today is that God has already placed pearl potential in your hand, in your greatest resource he's given you, which is people. You see, Barnabas had a Paul. Timothy had a Eunice and a Lois. David's 30 mighty men of valor had a David. Everybody has had somebody along the way who found him, believed in him, identified potential, and nurtured that thing out. God has called us to be cultivators of people. Cultivators of people. We're going to stop there today, and we're going to finish on again tomorrow. But as I close, I just want to tell you, tomorrow I'm going to be real practical. I'm going to be real practical with 6 keys, 6 techniques that didn't necessarily originate with us, might have come from some other sources, came a bit from trial and error and some other things, but 6 keys that begin to help us cultivate people, pearls, leaders at another level. So I'm going to give you those keys tomorrow, and I'm going to go in depth and explain them. It's going to be a real practical session, but I want to leave on this note. I read a story one time about a man who had a great piece of land, massive landowner, and he worked his land, he loved his land, he'd worked hard in his land for many, many years. But he started to feel dissatisfied. He started to feel bored. He started to feel like there must be more than this. He started to look around him and say, well, I don't know if this is enough for me. And a person came into his life who began to tell him about a distant place where the land there was just amazing. You could even find oil. There was treasure that was to be found on the land. Some of the land had gold and so on and so forth. And he began to paint this picture of this land that was out there. This guy, this came just the right time for him. He was ready for a change. He was tired of what he had been doing, and he wanted to pursue that thing. It sounded good. So what he did is he sold up everything that he had, and he left that region and that place, and he went off in pursuit of what he had heard, where it was a great place. He never found oil or gold on the land that he ended up settling in, but the person that bought his field found it on his own acreage. And the point being, We as leaders can look at every other ministry, every other kind of thing out there, every kind of, well, maybe if I just did that, if I only had a person like that, look what I could do. But the message of that story is, you've got pearls in your own field. You've got pearls in the people in your own church. And God is asking you, don't look out there. Don't get dissatisfied with what I've given you. If you haven't found them yet, you just got to dig a little deeper. You just got to cultivate a little more. And you'll find that pearl of great price that's already been positioned around you. It's just waiting for the person who has the vision and the helping hand to make it a reality.
We hope you enjoyed this life-changing message from City Life Church. For more information and free resources, please visit our website at www.citylifechurch.co.za. City